This conference will now be recorded.
So it was right around the time that Zoom was launching, and I'm glad that we didn't, because we would never have had the funds to compete with somebody like Zoom. GoToMeeting was owned by Citrix at the time, and they were huge, but none of these groups really had a really good room for what we saw as a big market, which was support groups. Anyway, we just kept moving it along, and eventually we moved our platform onto GoToMeeting. But the point I wanted to make is that people who have experienced support groups in the form of written forums or chats on Twitter or what have you, when they come into a meeting like this, it's a totally different experience. And the neatest thing is when people who have really known each other for like a couple of years sometimes, but they've never seen that person or they've never heard that person's voice. And all of a sudden they come on and they see them and they get so excited because this is the real, you know?
No, because I look at Michelle and I think that because I repeatedly watch her videos on Patient Power because well, you're close to my age and you just give me a lot of hope and you're just so vibrant and it's scary to have this. What's that?
That makes me, it makes it all worth it when I hear something like that.
Yeah.
It really does. I do it to help patients. The same way we've done all this.
Yeah.
All in it together. And I just happen to like to talk and report and write on things.
Well, I like to talk too, so that's a problem for me. So communicating's better. I've been on Health Unlocked is where I first started, and I was just diagnosed in January, so it's all pretty new.
It is new.
It is. And my mom just passed away a year ago, April, with multiple myeloma very quickly. So kind of rings home, a little bit.
I remember you had posted that.
Yeah. So it's just a lot to take in, So
what's interesting is my other two co-moderators who will be on joining us any second now, they're both multiple myeloma patients right now.
Oh, wow.
And this is, for blood cancers, but last month was our very first one, as you know, and we had just multiple myeloma and CLL patients on that one. And we'll see today what happens, but you'll be in very good company.
Yeah, because I do know a lot about multiple myeloma, a lot. My mom had the deletion 17 and a stem cell transplant, but hers was not donor. They don't do that for multiple myeloma. It was her own. So it was pretty traumatic, So
That is.
Yeah, it's a totally different blood cancer than the CLL, that's for sure. Well, with the markers she had, so.
So this might be one of our moderators that's showing up. Is that you, Richard?
Well, it's me trying to get there. Huh? Hello.
Hello.
You made it.
Well, I did make it. Are you seeing me?
No.
We hear you, and we see a big R.
But that's what I'm seeing. So I must be doing something. God.
Yeah, you got it right before. Have you enabled your camera?
Have
you clicked on the little camera icon?
Share.
There you go.
There we go. All right. How are you?
We're all well. I'm all well. How can I say we're all well? I shouldn't be talking for anybody else. I'm fine.
Well, I will tell you, Rick, in the Northeast, the wind has been blowing for about 3 weeks.
Wow.
And Michelle, you must see, if you're in downtown, you must see the craziness in and around, some of the high-rise buildings with the wind blowing. It's just, honestly, we're right on the water, sort of on the water, in the Gulf of Maine. And Jesus, it's just been whoosh, blowing at us and blowing for weeks. But
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
we've had some very strong winds. Jenny, can you remind me where you live, what state?
I live in Indiana now, yes. But I used to live in Maine growing up, actually, when I was a kid. So,
Oh,
no.
we're in Maine.
Yeah. I lived in Topsom,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
close to
Yep.
Brunswick. Yeah. Yep. It
Yep.
was a long time ago.
Hasn't changed much.
Yes, yes.
So
So, no, but I'm in Indiana now. So, yep.
is there truth to the fact that you had snow at the weekend?
A little flurries. Yeah, it's crazy. So it was. And then tomorrow's going to be 75. That's how the Midwest is. You just never know what you're going to get. So hopefully the cold is over because I don't do well with cold. It's not my favorite.
Me neither, but New England, they say, is like that too. Hi, Jack.
Yeah, but you're from
Welcome.
Florida. So,
Hi, how are
and then
you?
had to move back to Boston.
So Jack Aiello has just joined us, and Jack, you know Jack Rick, don't you, from Healthy Voices?
Yeah, sort of. We do sort of know each other, and I think
Yeah,
we're
not really.
LinkedIn and goodness knows what else. Jack, it's really nice to meet you virtually.
Nice to meet you as well.
Thank you, Jack, for joining us.
Yeah.
Jack, we have so far, people are just signing in, and we're still waiting for another one of our co-moderators. Richard, who you see here, Richard Pharma is another co-moderator, co-host of this, and Richard has multiple myeloma. And Kenny Capps, I don't know if you remember him from Healthy Voices as well. He also has.
Okay, I do know because I've been on a couple of councils with him.
Oh, great, great. And we have Jenny here who's with us, she is a CLL patient. And this is her, well, this is only our second, I just want to tell everyone. So this is only our second blood cancer support group. And we're getting to get used to the technology. Now we have someone else who's just joined us. I don't know if that's Kenny or someone else, but we don't know their name.
No,
Oh, it's Tom. Hi, Tom.
his microphone isn't on yet.
No, not yet. I'm glad Tom has joined us.
Yeah, excellent.
Jack, so you know Kenny. Have you met Richard before here?
I don't think so, although.
No, I don't think so at all. I'm sort of a newbie to all of this.
Are you a newbie to myeloma as well?
No, actually, almost 6 years.
Okay.
I guess that's a lot. It feels like it's a long time, believe me.
And are you on treatment right now?
I beg your pardon?
Are you on treatment right now?
I am. Yes, I am. Yeah. And I think probably forever.
Maybe.
Oh, hello,
Oh, it's Kenny.
Hello,
New York City.
New York City, Kenny. Jeez.
New York City. Don't tell my southern friends.
What's going on with New York City?
It's a magical place. In fact, my youngest is determined that she's going to live there when she grows up. She loves it. Oh, she decided that before she actually even visited New York City.
How old is she, Kenny?
Yeah, my youngest she'll be 7 in a few weeks.
Oh, that is really cute.
No,
I bet she wants to go to Radio City Music Hall, right?
She does. She actually she does want to be an actress, so she wants to do something on Broadway.
Yeah.
So my wife is an actress, so that comes honestly. So that helps. But and my sister is actually in New York right now. My sister is a nurse. She lives in Chapel Hill, but she's up there. She's been supporting them. She's at one of the NYU hospitals. I don't remember which one. And one of our board members, Throwing Bones board members, actually just got home from being there for 40 days, I think. So he was over there. He was at the Flushing Meadows. They had a field hospital, where they play the U.S. Open. They,
Yes.
yeah, they were at. They set up a field hospital there, and he said they were packed. I mean, just packed. So it had tents and everything. Crazy. So, how are you people? You look lovely.
We're all good. We're welcoming your compatriot Jack Aiello for the first time, and Tom Henry's there.
Jack,
Kenny, how you doing?
I'm well, sir. How have you been?
Oh, well, homebound like most and not traveling at all, doing a lot of web conferences.
Doing nothing? Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think the last time I saw you was in Dallas last year, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I've seen you since then.
I don't remember. Could have been at a Janssen meeting, could have been somewhere.
Yeah. Yep. None of us are going anywhere for a while, it looks like. So
Correct. A lot of web conferences.
yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Tom.
Jenny, you're going to learn that it's a small world and that we all somehow get to meet each other and know each other, as you'll see across different blood cancer areas, like with Jack and Kenny and
Yep.
Richard and myself and Rick.
Yep. Yep.
And here's Tom, who I actually had been on Facebook with in the past, and then we met finally at ASH in December. We met face to face.
Okay.
Hey, Tom. Welcome. Is that anything good that you're drinking there?
Peppermint tea
Delicious.
from fresh
What for the-
peppermint from my deck.
Going for the hard stuff.
Yes.
I have pure water. I'm just going for the here. Jenny, Tom also has CLL. Tom, Jenny is new to us and is a CLL patient as well. She was diagnosed in January, and
Okay.
her mom passed recently from multiple myeloma.
Okay.
So,
Well, welcome, Jenny.
Thank you.
It's a it is a
I understand there's no words to say. I get it.
yeah, it's a lot of words to say, but it's a journey.
Right.
Where are you
That's my
from,
sign.
Jenny?
I got my mom. Yep. Says enjoy the journey. I bought that for her when she had her stem cell transplant. So, yep.
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 Where's home, Jenny?
We lived in Indiana. Yep.
Indiana. Okay.
Uh-huh. Yep.
and Tom, are you in Florida? So you're home in Florida right now?
I am.
All these people who are in these great sunshiny states, and Jack, you're in California. What part of California?
Northern California, so just south of San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, I just heard that they just shut down all the university schools out there for the fall. They've decided to online only.
So far, just the state colleges. The universities haven't made a decision yet.
It's quite a that's quite a it's quite a big deal in the,
It's a huge deal, yeah.
era of higher education. It's a big deal to do that. But
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, my oldest is paranoid. He's terrified that that's going to happen here too. He wants to go back to school, so he's afraid he'll be a sophomore.
Well, the interesting thing is the literature seems to be suggesting nationally that most of the institutions are going to be in place in the fall. And so the big deal with California is the not doing that. And it's just whoa, that's a big deal.
It may also be a huge cost issue when you think about trying to do it and keeping 6 foot apart. All of a sudden, you can't do that in classrooms per se without staggering classrooms, but you can't stagger teachers. So it's really difficult to envision how you can do it without exposing folks if the pandemic's still going on.
Well,
I listened to the I listened to the interview with the California's governor this morning, or this afternoon, and said that the rationale, of course, is that it's a lot easier to pull back and say, or relax things than it is to try to ramp up, right? Waiting until August, because everybody has to get everything in place if they're going to do it online. It's a lot easier to say, you know what, we can go to school now and let's do it. But
Yeah. Plus, it's what they've been doing already for a couple of months.
right.
Oh, in I don't know if it's been in the national news, but in Boston, there's a student that started this. Now others are jumping on. There's a student at Northeastern University who is suing, of course, right?
I did see that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So now our son, who's in college, is saying he doesn't know if he wants to sign up for the fall because he feels like he really isn't connecting right now with online. I need that personally, that in person. That's why this kind of thing is great, but I can't imagine going to school this way or just being taught like one way,
Yeah.
It would be difficult.
So a good friend, a very close friend of mine from college buddy, who's still close with, is the associate provost for University of the Arts, which is part of London University. And we've been writing recently, and he was telling me that he has to find £100 million in savings in his budget next year in order to make ends meet. Yeah.
Because of lack of tuition or additional cost to do things online, or?
I think all of the above. There was a good piece on NPR yesterday, which I happened to send to him because it was actually his birthday yesterday, about, I think it's about 40% of all revenues in the UK come from foreign students.
Yeah.
To no travel, right?
So lack of tuition.
Yeah. Wow. Does the state over there supplement the universities like the state schools do here?
Yeah. I mean, to what extent, I don't know. I mean, years ago when I went to school with Steve, yes, it was huge.
Yeah.
I don't know how the system has changed. A lot has changed since I left. So it was a tiered system, somewhat like here, where you have the state universities. You have the universities in the state, then state universities. And there you used to have the universities and then polytechnics, which were like the state colleges. And then all of those polytechnics have now become universities in their own rights. So the funding has changed a lot. We can get, I can get Stephen in to give us a tutorial sometime. But anyway, I'm going to cut out and let you guys start your meeting. And I will be here in the background sending you rude notes or whatever I do.
Looking forward to it.
And I'll help you with muting and what have you. And I think I'll even send a text to my buddy Al and see if I can get into the meeting because he could really use it.
That would be great. And everyone, I just ask that because I do hear some reverb or background noise. If we're not speaking, maybe we can, if you can mute yourself, because I keep hearing some background sound, and I've been muting myself because I know my dog, who some people here already know of, Gabby, is in the background shaking her head with her collar jingling, and my husband's shaking his head and his collar is jingling. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. So there are things going on. So Jenny is a newbie here, as I was saying before. So I just wanted to open the floor to Jenny, or to see if she would rather just listen for a while and see what's happening, or if she would rather that we just kind of talk about a couple of things that that are on the top of our mind. If she would rather wait and then speak with us. I mean, this is a novel forum in that it's face-to-face versus just writing on, Facebook or social media, or you're attending an in-person support group, and that's even a different dynamic than this. So see, there's my husband. Oh, thank you. I have peppermint tea now, Tom.
Oh.
And there's no collar on them at all.
Oh,
Thanks, Kenny.
run. Hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
I know. So Jenny,
Well,
is there anything in particular that you would like to
well, I guess I'm just looking for, a lot of people don't. I have a great support system. However, like many of you, I'm sure, have said, with the CLL especially, they just don't understand it. With my mom recently passing, she only had her myeloma for 2 years. She was very young when she passed. She was only barely 66. So we're still grieving that, obviously, but there's some similarities with markers, the deletion 17, which she unfortunately had that. And my diagnosis, I actually went to my just female exam and went in for a routine exam. And I work in medical, which when I got diagnosed, you would have thought that I didn't know anything about medical because I was just over the top with anxiety. I asked my doctor, who at one point I worked for him, I said, do you mind if I go ahead and order some lab work on me, because I hadn't been to the doctor in a few years because I'm self-employed. And so ordered some markers that were kind of suggestive of myeloma that I knew. My mom, I did a lot of research with her. There was potential that if the stem cell didn't work, that maybe down the road she could have CAR T cell, blah, blah, blah. So I was her go-to when it came to the medical type of things. So I ordered some things and that all came back great. And then one day my girlfriend, who was a nurse there, called me and said, your white blood cells are through the roof. They were at 28. And then my absolute lymphocytes were, I don't know, I think 24. So we were fortunate enough to have a world-renowned specialist here in Indiana for multiple myeloma, Dr. Rifat Abenauer, and he became a very good, close family friend of ours. And so I reached out to him, and he did a flow cytometry on me, and it did not come back as classic CLL. He said you had some form of early leukemia. They just could not figure out which form. So I was told 5 different B-cell cancers over text, not by phone call or, he's very intelligent, but I think it was just more because we were on a friend level, but for a month and a half, it just really spooked me. Well, there's one CLL specialist, but he also specializes in multiple other hematological blood disorders in Indiana. And so it's his partner, ironically. So I searched him out, and the day that I went in for his appointment, my first doctor, my mother's doctor, screenshotted me a computer and picture and said, we think it's atypical CLL, because some of my markers were not as suggestive. But so he said it's either a break off of marginal zone or CLL. So a month and a half of waiting for that, just the anxiety just was pretty intense, obviously. And, the way I get through it every day, is now, it's been 4 months, 5 months. You just take the cards you're dealt, there's nothing you can do. And, I have normal fish. So I'm fortunate on that. They did some pretty extensive workup testing on me. So I'm very fortunate on that, except for the financial aspect of it, because I did not have insurance at the time. So my doctor stated that if and when the time were to treat would be ibrutinib, but I watch a lot of the ASH videos, obviously the Patient Power, Health Unlocked. I'm not sure if any of you have heard of them. They're just a written forum, but they are throughout the world. A lot of UK people on there, but extremely intelligent. I learned a lot. They did not do a IGVH, I think that's what it is, mutated or unmutated, when they did my fish. So I asked my doctor when I went back in there in February, Um, I said, well, I know what needs to be done. I said, I know I'm CD38 negative, which is potentially suggestive of mutation, but clearly I've had this for quite some time because I have 50% in my bone marrow of the CLL cells. And he said, I can order that test. He goes, but I worry more about your anxiety because what if you are unmutated? And I said, well, I'm going to probably bank on that I'm mutated just for the fact that I've had this for quite some time and never knew it because I don't have any symptoms. And I'm fortunate on that. At least I hope I am. So I agreed with him, and I was supposed to actually go to his office on Monday, and they asked me if I wanted to go. And I said, right now I think I'm okay. I don't have any symptoms. I'm obviously on wait and watch. So we agreed to do every 6 months. So I go back in July. And so it's just, it doesn't go off my mind, to be perfectly honest. I'm just trying to, take each day as it comes and, but it's people like you guys that do this that give me a lot of hope, and I'll probably cry. It's just, I live alone and.
So, Jenny, yeah, I'm not sure that I understand all of the technical details uh, uh, of your disease, and
Right.
but having been through this multiple myeloma for almost 6 years, I guess what struck me as you were going through was what are you feeling about all of this? I have the sense that you're sort of in waiting, and
Well,
I wondered about that.
that part, I mean, I've done a lot of research, so I feel fortunate that I'm waiting because I've lost a lot of people. I went to 7 funerals last year. 3 of them had multiple myeloma. One being my mother, obviously, and 2 of our good friends. And then, so watching them go through what they went through, but they had lived with it for quite some time. Unfortunately, my mom did not. And the wait and watch, I mean, of course, it's always on the back of your mind. In me right now, because I think it's so new, it's on the front of my mind. So I just, I worry about, so many things. I mean, things that can transform and how young I am to have this disease. That's a big thing with CLL because most people they state are much older than I am. I'll be 47 in June. They say that I think the standard age to get diagnosed with what I have is late 60s, early 70s. So my doctor said, I would probably have to have multiple lines of treatment. Therefore, there's more toxicities, more risk for clonal evolution, for my markers to change. So I worry about that quite a bit, because I am so young.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Jenny, and Michelle, maybe you can jump in too, and Tom. So is a bone marrow transplant, is that a standard course of treatment for what you have or no?
Typically not.
Okay.
So the old treatment was, chemo with immune therapy. But now we have a lot of these targeted drugs. So Jenny mentioned that her doctor mentioned ibrutinib, which was the first of the targeted drugs. So, being a CLL patient myself, I was only watch and wait for 6 months because I'm a 17p deletion. There are a lot of people that are unmutated. So we have a local support group here. We have a woman that just started treatment. She's in a clinical trial within the last couple of months. She went 15 years before she needed any treatment. This is her, if my memory serves me correctly, it's her 3rd or 4th different cancer that she's had. So everybody's a little bit different. So, the fact that your white blood cell count is really quite low at this point. Yes, it's elevated, but that's a really good sign. So typically what your doctor will look at is what's the doubling rate? So how often does that value of 28, how long will it take till it gets to 56?
Yeah, it actually went down from December to January, went down 12 points, and then it went back up again. So it's kind of fluctuating, but I do know that it is pretty low still considering some.
Right. But everybody is a little bit different. So,
Sure.
we have people that get well up into the hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
They have symptoms and require treatment. And then there's people like, my treatment started, my white blood cell count was really not what the trigger was. It had only gotten to 65,000. What the trigger for my treatment was my platelets had dropped to 65.
Right.
So that was the trigger. So everybody's a little bit different, but you said 50% involvement in the marrow. At diagnosis, I was 70% involvement in the marrow. I just had my second bone marrow biopsy done in January or February because I've been on ibrutinib now for 4 years, and I added venetoclax to my therapy.
Okay.
And so when I was diagnosed, I was 70% involved, and this latest one, it was 10. So
good for you. That's great.
yes, so there's really a lot of, there's a lot of positive news today,
Sure.
and there are a lot of drugs that are in the pipeline. So ibrutinib and acalabrutinib are currently two what they call Bruton tyrosine kinase inhibitors. Those two drugs, basically, patients can develop resistance, but there's several, three, I believe, new variants of the BTK inhibitors that will not have that problem with developing resistance, at least by the same mechanism.
Right. Right up
So
on
there's a lot of
some
hope out there to come, in the world of CLL. So
Yeah.
Tom, that was great. And I just want to, for those I know Kenny and Richard know, and Jack, I don't know if you're familiar, but Tom is a pharmacist. So when he talks about drugs that are out and the things that are in the pipeline, he really knows what he's talking about, especially when it comes to some of the things we all have, because it's near and dear. But in addition to CLL, I'm sure, is very familiar also with the drugs that you're all on, our multiple myeloma crowd here. But Jenny, I wanted to share with you, you mentioned something about mutated or unmutated.
Mm-hmm.
Mutated in this case is better than unmutated.
Right. I just
And
don't know mine yet.
Yeah, it's interesting that you had a flow cytometry and the FISH test, and they didn't test that, which is interesting.
And I had a bone marrow, so they did not test it.
They gave, because I thought that wasn't done right off the bat anymore. But then again, they might have been something
why
else.
They did the bone marrow was because mine was not coming up classic CLL on the flow cytometry. So that's why they did the bone marrow.
Also, to give you hope, like what Tom was just sharing, I didn't have treatment until my bone marrow was 91% infiltrated by CLL. I'm not happy about that, but
Right.
I know that was the first bone marrow biopsy I'd had, but everything else was still not bad. My lymph nodes were the only sign they had started really. But again, as Tom said, it's different with every patient. I'm
Sure.
a level 2 and unmutated, which I know is a whole other language. We have someone else who just joined us. Al, hi, thank you for joining us. And it's funny how quickly we all learn this language about all these kinds of deletions and the genetic markers that are, in the different tests.
Yeah, Michelle, and it's one of the things that I wanted to comment on, particularly with what Jenny was talking about, and that's, as I listened to Tom and you know, from my perspective, Tom, thank God you're you're a pharmacist and can help me understand, at least at a marginal level. But you know, how does that give everybody in this room a sense of hope? That hope is a particularly important variable in all of our lives. And I wondered what you thought about that. You know, we're listening to the technical, drug related, treatment related materials for our collective diseases, and I just wondered what the hell does that make you feel? Anyway, I just throw it out there.
So, I've always been, in my particular case, a pretty positive person. And I have to echo something that Jenny said, that, when you first get diagnosed, even though she is a healthcare worker like I am, it's overwhelming. No matter what, I wasn't an oncology pharmacist. Actually, I worked at the executive level with a bunch of oncology pharmacists working under me, and I was responsible for their budget and the resources and stuff that they need. So what I've learned about CLL, I've learned since, I started to get actively involved in educating myself about the disease. And I honestly set a goal for myself when I was diagnosed in September of 2015 that I was going to spend at least 15 to 20 minutes every day learning something new about CLL because I might need it in some point in the future. And I think that, I mentioned that I went on venetoclax. Well, that's not an approved therapy at the present time. But I've read enough of the research that's being done in the clinical trials to say that there's some really positive results for the combination of drugs. So I asked my doctor if he would approve it. And he said, yeah, but I don't know if your insurance will approve it because it's not currently approved. So I advocated for myself to be added, to have that drug added, because if I can get to what they call undetectable minimal residual disease, I have a much better prognosis for the long term. So I maintain a positive attitude. I'm really thrilled to see all the research that goes on. I had no idea, but I looked at, there's a website, clinicaltrials.gov. So I put in CLL. There's 1,830 some odd clinical trials underway right now just for CLL.
Wow.
That's just extraordinary.
I want to stress that. How many are in research, Tom?
1,830 something. So, yeah.
That's got to make, I know that makes me feel good, and I don't have CLL, but good Lord, that sense that, boy, there's something going on out there, and, maybe there's hope, maybe there's, wow, that just,
So you can do the same thing, actually go in and, so it's clinicaltrials.gov, and you type in the condition you want to know about. So pulmonary myeloma, and you can see what is out there for yourself as well. So it's good to know what trials are out there, how many people they're enrolling, what they hope to accomplish, so that if your current treatment fails, potentially a clinical trial might be your next option. So Jack, I don't think I heard what type of blood cancer you have.
I'm also myeloma. Just
Okay.
just to mention one thing, though, you mentioned venetoclax not approved, but it is approved for CLL now, right? Maybe it wasn't when you started.
No, the combination of ibrutinib and venetoclax.
Okay.
So venetoclax is approved as a sole agent, and ibrutinib is approved as a sole agent, but I'm taking both.
Okay, got it. The combination you're talking about.
Correct.
but I've had myeloma for a long time. So
Yeah.
when Richard asked the question about what gives you hope, if you follow the disease and track, at least for myeloma, all of the treatments that have been developed over the past, let's say, last 15 years or so, it gives you an incredible sense of hope with respect to the progress that's been made, at least since I was diagnosed, and the research that's still going on.
Mhm. You know, with myeloma, you know, I served last year on a drug company's uh, pharmacy panel. Celgene is the company,
Yeah.
and they have a CAR T product that they hope to have approved by the third or fourth quarter of this year, which it looks really, really promising. And unlike most of the CAR T that's out there today and commercially approved, um, they believe they're going to be able to do this as an outpatient, just that you would not be able to reside more than 2 hours away from where you get treatment so that you could get back. So, but they would do it as an outpatient thing. You would not have to be admitted. So it's one more hope. So, you know, there again, all these clinical trials that have gone on with that CAR T product, you know, I would definitely be reading those and making sure that I know, you know, what my options are, and you know, what are the parameters that you need to have in order to qualify for CAR T and that kind of thing. So,
In fact, they
And I
submitted
kind of
for
second
approval.
that, Tom.
They submitted
What's
for
that?
approval to the
Oh, sorry.
FDA. Sorry.
yes,
And it got rejected.
okay, but you know, there are times when those products get rejected on technical grounds, and there's times when they get rejected because of lack of efficacy. So I'm not
Yeah,
familiar.
this wasn't efficacy. I think it was lack of manufacturing standards.
Okay,
So it'll get resubmitted probably in the middle of summer.
okay.
And if you want to talk about things that inspire you, Jack is actually one of the things probably that inspires me. Again, because he mentioned that he's had it for a long time, but I believe it's been since the 90s, right, Jack?
Yeah, 25 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, an average, I think when I was diagnosed, they were saying 3 to 5 or 5 to 8, depending on which study you looked at, was average mortality rate or lifespan. Is that right? After diagnosis. And when I was diagnosed at the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, so it shows you that, and so Jack got it when it was diagnosed back in the dark ages of myeloma.
Jack,
It was
So,
dark.
Jack,
yeah, it was.
25 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that would have been probably before Geraldine Ferraro got it.
It was.
Yeah,
I met her a
that's
couple
crazy.
times in DC and she asked me about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
That's
Yeah.
remarkable. You know, talk about hope, Jack. You know, I just, I'm astounded at 25 years in terms of a number. When I was like Kenny, I think when I was initially diagnosed back in 2014, you know, they were talking about 5 years. And I felt damn good when I hit the 5th year. It was yay! But, you know, as I progressed into the 6th year, I am absolutely astounded. And God, I wish you 35. I don't know what a number would be, Jack, but, you know, it's just a extraordinary thing. And it's an extraordinary thing for me to hear. So thank you.
Yeah.
Well,
You know,
I've been extremely fortunate. So you know, when you are that fortunate, you try to give back. And so when someone was saying this was a unique opportunity to kind of have a support group this way, we have a big support group that I facilitate, and we've done it this way the last couple of months, and we'll have 40 people on the screen. It's a little chaotic, but it works out.
I just
Well, I
wanted
would say to your multiple myeloma patients, sorry, Michelle.
Oh, Sorry, Jenny. I was just going to we have some newcomers. So I just wanted to let everyone know there's a chat feature on this that at the top in the right-hand corner, there's a little bubble, like a talk bubble. And usually when someone comes on, we welcome them. So Al, I've sent you a welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. And I don't know, caller 01, well, caller 1, it's a caller, so I can't chat with you. None of us can, but it says CO. Is that Colorado or are those your initials?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because I was having trouble on my laptop and I didn't want to waste any more time. So I'm getting the audio off of my phone and I'm doing off of my laptop, but I'll mess with that later.
Al, it's caller 1. Got it.
Gosh, I thought we had hit the 9-person mark. I got all excited, Al.
Yeah, so it's Arizona, not Colorado.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Al, do you just, I know that you want to talk about newly diagnosed. Jenny was just sharing with us that she was just diagnosed, I believe you said January, Jenny?
Yeah.
And Al, from what I understand, you're still in the process of being diagnosed, or?
Well, I had my first blood work in January, which my platelets were elevated. And then in about the middle of February, went back in for a second test. Platelets were elevated and white blood cells were elevated. Did another blood work about, I believe in March. I forget the name of the cancer he said it was, but it wasn't very aggressive. However, the first time, I don't know where I wrote it down. He diagnosed me the first time with something, then had some more blood work done after that. So now he's leaning more towards myofibrosis.
Your Jenny had described to us, I don't think you had joined us yet, how she went through a similar situation, although not for myelofibrosis, with getting diagnosed, that it took a while, multiple kinds of tests and kind of some does that summarize it, Jenny? I don't want to put words in your mouth. So
No,
Al,
right. So it's still kind of in between atypical CLL or marginal zone lymphoma. My doctor thinks it was breaking off from marginal zone lymphoma and turned into CLL. So,
and
but
Al,
doesn't Andrew Shore have myelofibrosis, Michelle?
that is his
Is that
secondary. Yes.
secondary? Yeah.
He may drop in this evening.
Oh, okay.
He had told me. So Al, we may have someone, I had told Rick, we may be having someone who's very well known in the blood cancer community joining us, who has what you've been hearing us talk about, CLL, which is chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and now myelofibrosis. So he's under treatment right now. He's very public about it, so I'm not sharing anything he would not share himself on that. So I hope he does. But so they've told you it's probably, or they don't know definitively yet. Am I understanding you correctly? That must not be a fun place.
Yeah. Well, through my hematologist, that's what he said. However, he sent over paperwork for us to be admitted into the banner at University Medical Center here in Tucson, and also the Mayo Clinic. However, we've already registered in for a meeting with the Mayo Clinic, and I did have a bone marrow biopsy. I'm afraid to look at all this stuff. I'm scared, and so my wife has been looking at it. We talked about it last night, and she said she did print it out. Of course, if I was to look at it, I probably wouldn't understand anything what it says. So yes, we're still waiting. I think I have another video chat with my hematologist. I believe it's next week or the week after that.
Is your hematologist, are they a general oncologist hematologist, or do they specialize in one particular blood cancer?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know. Rick has been helping me out a lot. Rick has been doing a lot of the work for me.
He's a good person to have on your team.
Yes, yeah. Yes, he is.
I found that having, once you are diagnosed, having someone, and Jenny, I'm unsure with you, if I think you may have said that the second doctor, the one you're seeing now, maybe is a CLS specialist, is that, or not?
He is a CLS specialist, but he also does, I don't think he's as in tune as some of the, like Jennifer Brown, Richard Furman, William Weirdow, all of those guys. I did want to put a plug in for myeloma because I probably know a lot about myeloma actually because of my mom. Whoever has myeloma on here, I would suggest you look up Dr. Abenauer in Indiana. He's a world-renowned specialist, and he is absolutely amazing. And he's the one that officially diagnosed me. But his specialty is just in multiple myeloma, and he is a phenomenal doctor. He's in Indiana, but he does a lot of research. He has a lot of books that he's written and things out there. He does Miles for Myeloma, raises a lot of money for it. We're heavily involved, my family and I, because of my mom. So not that, you guys don't have great specialists, but he's a wonderful, wonderful physician. And I think it would be good for all of you to look into him a little bit.
I would agree with you, Jenny. I know Rafat quite well, and he's, in addition to being an expert, is a very kind person as well.
Yes. Doesn't like to give bad news, that's for sure. Yeah, he's a great guy. I mean, he helped me a lot and helped my family a lot with my mother. So he's pretty remarkable man. So.
And as far as CLL, Tom is works closely with the CLL Society. They have a wonderful service that they have, right, Tom? Where if you let's just say you're not pleased with your CLL specialist, the CLL Society has, what is it called, Tom, for helping find someone close to you?
It's called expert access. Woof, woof.
Yeah, that was Gabby, not Brian. That was the dog.
Okay.
How come the dog doesn't have their own picture? We need a frame for the dog here.
I know. She always happens to be part of this. Exactly. I'll have to give her own account and laptop, I guess, or paw pad. So Tom, that, and I know that other people have asked about Indiana and some of the things, but Jenny, are you confident with your CLL specialist?
I really am. And he's the most compassionate individual. Of course, I like to talk a lot, if you can't tell. So he said, well, I'm always going to have you at the end of my appointments for the day. But I'm the need to know type of person. I don't know why. That just gives me more, things to prepare for, I guess. I don't know. But I did tell him, because I did go on the CLL Society page and through Brian Kaufman's website and researched Dr. John Bird, who was in Ohio and very close. And I think he had a lot to do with the ibrutinib when that came about. So I think when the time comes for me to need treatment, I will go there, just because I'm a little concerned on not having a specific 100% diagnosis yet, whether it's marginal zone or atypical CLL, because there's different treatments for both. I do believe that it is atypical CLL because more of my markers show that way, but there are some that are a little off. And, for the first probably 3 months, I just 24/7 researched and researched and researched things. And that's where I got all of my knowledge with it. And so, you
So
know,
I'd like to ask a question. This is Rick, on behalf of Al, because I can't answer the question for him, and he's spoken about this, which is, if you all can cast your memories back, other than Jenny, who doesn't have to go back that far, to the time when you were diagnosed, how do you deal with that uncertainty? And some of you may know, some may not. I do a lot of advocacy work, not in the field of blood cancer, mostly in the field of prostate cancer. And we are very familiar with newly diagnosed patients being like a deer in the headlights. And most of you can remember that time. And, we've got some amazing people on this call. I mean, Kenny's run, how many, 1,200 miles was it, Kenny, or am I shorting you?
No, that's right. 1,200 miles.
That's about right. After a diagnosis, and you've been around for a long time, all of you. I mean, what words can you give to Al, who right now is very much the deer in the headlights, and isn't comfortable even reading his own reports and is relying on his wife? I mean, what's your experience been, and how can you advise him?
Well, I'll take a crack at it. I can certainly remember being diagnosed, even though it was 25 years ago. And there's a feeling of you're overwhelmed, you're scared, you're dealing with terminology you've never heard of, including the cancer. Nobody had ever heard of myeloma, and even today you've probably never heard of it unless you're diagnosed. So I think the way to get around that is to get educated. You got to learn the names of these drugs you're taking. You got to learn the name of the cancer that you have. You have to learn the name of these markers that are followed. You have to learn what to ask the doctor.
Maybe now more than ever.
Yeah, so, and support groups are a great way to do that. You can just sit and listen to support groups, because people will share things that you've never heard of before, and then you kind of ask, well, what are you talking about? But I think it's all about education.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's actually number one, and also advocating for yourself with that education. You have to be your own advocate. That's also why it's helpful to, if you can, take somebody with you every time. Sounds like, Al, you've got your wife as your compadre, and that's probably the best person to do it, as long as she can emotionally detach enough in order to be your rock when you need her to be your rock, because sometimes you just miss stuff. It's overwhelming. It's sort of drinking out of a fire hose sometimes. And again, even more so these days. Even since 2014, things have changed so much in the world of myeloma. Every year, some new drug or version of it is coming out. It's wild. So I know it's true in all cancers. It's absolutely amazing what is happening. That's the good part. The staggering part is that you've got to take the bull by the horns, and you can't just take what your oncologist throws at you sometimes. You've got to be your own advocate. And it's not that they don't want the best for you. Absolutely they do. But they're unable to do everything for you because they can't sit there. They just can't walk in your shoes. Only you can do that.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. When I was first diagnosed, I was a widower, so I was by myself. The first time, and Al, I'm a pharmacist in addition to being a CLL patient. So, I had some basic knowledge, but, still very overwhelming, very scary. But after my first appointment, I started taking a tape recorder with me. You've heard us talk, and we use jargon and we use terminology that to us, we know exactly what it means. But when you're trying to remember it when you get home, and you ask your wife or you try to remember what the doctor said, it's almost impossible. So, you do have to ask the doctor if it's okay if you record the session, but I think that's a really good tool to get to that. I will tell you that I believe it's probably applicable with all cancers, but there is documented scientific evidence that anxiety and worry are not good for us. They actually worsen our prognosis. And so by learning more and more and having a good handle, as everybody has kind of said, you become better able to cope with that and not be scared and not be anxious, which then in turn improves your prognosis for the future. So it's kind of a vicious cycle if you just kind of sit there and say, you know what, I don't want to read the report. I don't, but I would take those reports and that they print out and hand to you at the end of the visit and go home and look up terminology and stuff just to get a little bit more familiar with it, to the point now that I can advocate for other CLL patients, and other patients that, are new, like Jenny, who's, only been a couple of months. It's a learning process for us all. And, yes, some of us are lucky that we've gotten, a number of years, but I'm very hopeful because, I'm on 2 drugs right now, but I still know that I have 2 or 3 other options that if this fails, there's other drugs out there now that are available that weren't available, 10, 15 years ago. So a lot of progress. So I wouldn't be scared. And I echo the remark that knowledge is your friend. So, don't put your head in a hole, because all you're going to see is dark.
Let me, as the group shrink, I guess. Let me just add a few thoughts to that, Alan, and that is hope and anxiety are normal. To say that you're feeling confused, scared, anxious, absolutely positively normal. And the issue that I have often with the medical community is that they are very commonly ill prepared to deal with that, or at least unwilling to deal with that at the patient level. And I remember when I was first diagnosed, I said to my oncologist, one of the questions that I have for you is when the time comes, and it will come, and God, I hope it's 25 years from now, although I would be substantially old. Will you be honest with me? Will you tell me the truth? Will you say, Richard, and not Dr. Farmer, but will you say, Richard, it's a couple weeks or a couple months. Go do what you need to do. Can you be that honest with me so that I can be honest with myself and I can be honest with my family and my children and my grandchildren? And, from my perspective, I think those are all very normal feelings, very normal thoughts. So that as any one of us go out for a walk, now that we're all confined, and some of us are hyper confined due to the virus. But as you kind of go out for the walk and you're talking to yourself and thinking to yourself, it's is it normal? Yeah, it's normal. It's absolutely normal. And what can you do about it? And from my perspective, the best thing that you can do about it is to recognize it and say, yeah, this is part of my life. And I can't hide from it, but I sure can say, yeah, this is part of my life. And here's what I want to do about it. I want to do whatever it is. talk to my spouse, talk to my children, talk to my neighbors, talk to my former employees, whatever those things are. But you cannot deny, and that's the point, and then I'll shut up. You can't deny the psychological feelings, the emotional feelings, because they are as real as all of the medical feelings and thoughts that these folks here have talked about today, because my head's just spinning when I think of all of the drugs and the what have yous. And I'm used to looking at the medical literature. So, and God help me for doing that, but, you know, equally important. So God bless you, and, you know, it's okay.
Michelle, what are your what are your thoughts on all of this? And by the way, I want to tell Al that you know, I've offered, and I'll stick with him, and I'm gonna teach him how to get comfortable with some of this medical literature. And for me, it's a learning process too, because I know very little about the blood cancers. But we're gonna do this together, Al. But Michelle, what's your what are your thoughts?
So first of all, Richard, thank you, because thank you for giving validation to the fears. And I personally, I know in the beginning, my fear was like, way up on the Richter scale. And then for whatever reason, and I don't know if others feel this way, it subsides over time. And I don't know if that's due to us accepting change, or that we see we're still here, that there are these options, and the hope that we're being given through the education. Someone had mentioned going online. Jenny, it may have been you, and researching as much as they can. Richard, I know you're saying you're reading medical journals, and Tom, you read things that are credible, but those of us who don't have access to that and we go online, I know that was one of the worst things I could have done when I was first diagnosed, because information online isn't always credible. It's not, but Jenny, you said you're in the medical profession, so perhaps you have things that have great credible information. But what I first read, I would have been dead, like, within, I want to say, I think it was 5 years. And that was right in the first few hours after being diagnosed.
I didn't. That's where, unfortunately, the myeloma with her came into play. And, I do believe that patient support groups, my doctor actually started his own patient support group. Obviously, right now with the COVID-19, nobody can go, but he does it the first Monday of every month. His father actually has mantle cell lymphoma. So that was one of the cancers they thought I might have. So he's very compassionate. And I think that if you can get, and Al, I will tell this to you because I'm recently diagnosed as well as you are. And mine's kind of a, not specific cancer. I mean, probably a little bit more specific than yours has played out to be. But Patient Power is such wonderful. They have every type of blood cancer you can imagine. Michelle I look up to her because she's close to my age, and she gives me so much hope, and she's already been through treatment. These gentlemen here that have multiple myeloma is something that my mother had just a year ago. And that gives me a lot of hope for them, because she only lived 2 years with it, but they've lived 25, 6, I believe everything happens for a reason. That sounds so cliche, I think, probably. But, I think you're going to be just fine. I think if you get on Patient Power and find the the founder of Patient Power. Al, if you do have myelofibrosis, I think is what you said you potentially have. Andrew Shore is remarkable, and that's who Michelle kind of advocates for and talks. I don't know what you do, what your actual job is there, but I do think, and they do say it, and it may sound a little corny, cliche, whatever, but I do think knowledge is power. Don't get obsessive. I did that, and it just really, and do not get on Google. That's the worst thing you could ever do in your life, honestly.
Yep, first thing that my doctor told me, don't Google it.
Yes, and it's horrific because it will tell you, well, you're going to be gone tomorrow, and but you get with people like this 8 people that are on here now, or 7 people, excluding me because I'm very new into this, but it has given me nothing but hope, and I repeat these things and I replay them, and I just think that there's you're going to be okay. I do believe that for every person on this screen right now. I really do, because and like Kenny said, you've got to be an advocate for yourself. It's your life you're talking about. So you got to push through, and that's what my mom told me to do all the time. You just push through, and you just got to do that. And you're very lucky, because I'm by myself, as I think Tom is as well. It's hard to be alone. So you're very fortunate you have a wife to be your advocate, and that's wonderful to have that support. Very wonderful. So I'll shut up now because I talk too much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and actually education really is one of the most powerful tools. Everyone's been reiterating that. And Rick, that's one of the best things I did, because the more I knew I was taking back my power. That's one of the things I believe that I took back my power. It empowered me, but also I knew it to ask, and I knew what clinical trials to ask about and what was on the horizon or not. And that one of the most important things I learned, I was at the FDA for a science symposium, and I got to see some of the wonderful things the FDA does, even though they're given a bad rap. And I actually got to meet with the doctor in charge of the trials. And although she couldn't tell me about the trials, she couldn't tell me much about it, she at least told me there was, and she was a hematologist oncologist herself, she could at least tell me that there was so much in the pipeline. At the time, it wasn't as many, Tom, as you shared as there are now. This would have been back in 2014. So it wasn't as much as we have now, but it was still a very good number that she couldn't share with me. Although she had this big, pile of papers and a list, and she's like, I can't show you this. And I'm like, trying to see, but that'll help. But I was in a lot of fear. And I've been reminded by a close friend of mine who was just diagnosed with ovarian cancer about a month and a half ago, who started treatment. I was reminded about how little information is out there in the world. We now, I think there is so much information, but we've all had to learn it. We've all had to find out where to go. And I think there's a lot more now. It's easier to learn about. But that fear of first being diagnosed and not knowing, and hearing all these horror stories that you think is the way it is for everyone, and thinking chemo is generic and all those things. Tom, you would know better than that, and a lot of people, but that's how I've been finding people feel they don't know enough. And Jenny, you had the opportunity, not a great opportunity, but you learned with your mom that there were different things that we all had to learn from scratch, about markers and all of that. So knowledge is a great thing to learn in all this. And these support groups do help. The more you attend, is the better for yourself and your own advocacy. And Jack,
I thank you all.
Jack, you do an awful lot. I know in the multiple myeloma community, you've done some things with Patient Power, right? When I recall, were you interviewed?
I have. I've got, in fact, an interview with a doctor. Andrew and I are both interviewing him tomorrow. So yeah, I've done a lot with Patient Power, but I've done a lot with, there are a couple of great myeloma specific organizations, if you don't know about them, the International Myeloma Foundation and Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society are really excellent for all blood cancers. So there's a lot of good help out there.
I just want to say, um, I, I have a long history of teasing Al. Al and I go back quite a long time. And Jenny, you are, as a talker, in very good company here, although you wouldn't know it, because you and Al are good buddies. Al could get a gold medal. In fact, when I first met Al, I met Al through his brother, and his older brother Luis, who is not a very talkative person, I have to say. But when I met Al, Al told me that everybody tells him he makes up for him and his brother together. So even though he's being very quiet right now, it's a pleasure. I've never heard Al so quiet for such a long time. He is a talker, and we'll get him talking in these meetings before long. I do think you're getting some great advice, though. We are actually printing up some shirts for ANCAN that say you are your best advocate. And I think everybody is saying the same thing. I mean, nobody can speak up better for you than you can. And it's so important when you talk to your doctor, because when they hear it from you, even when they hear it from your caregiver, they don't take notice sometimes. But when they hear it from you, they take notice.
Y'all, I hate to jump in. I have to sort of jump out right now. I need to go to read The Hobbit to my littlest one. So we're about Bilbo's about to rescue them from the big giant spiders. So we've got to take care of business. So, but thanks for letting me be a part of this. And Jenny and Al, it was nice to meet you. Jack, good seeing you again. And of course, the rest of you, always wonderful. And I certainly will talk to you soon. I'm looking forward to the next one. So,
and great. I'm set up to speak to your man Wilson on Monday morning.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rick. I saw the email. Thank you very much. All right, have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Kenny. Good night. So Al, we lost Al. No, there he is. You have position. So Al, with all this, do you have anything you wanted to ask or from us?
Yes.
Good night.
I haven't really spoke with this to a lot of people, mainly just my brothers and my mom. I think my wife has told more of her family than I have told anybody else. How do you go about when, so I'm a painter by trade, and I do a lot of work for the same clientele. I mean, they're constantly checking with me. Where am I at? Am I okay? They're worried about me. And I'm like hiding in the hole. I don't know what to tell them. I don't know how to tell them.
Well, I think, Al, you're in a tough spot in that you don't have a definitive diagnosis as of yet. And so, it's really difficult. But I will tell you, that I told my children, as soon as I had a definitive diagnosis, I didn't tell my mother. My mother was a worrier and she was 90 years old. And, I just didn't feel like I wanted to put that level of anxiety on it. Knowing what I know, that this is a disease in my case that can be controlled, she would worry, herself. And she has passed since then, but, for 3.5 years that she was alive after my diagnosis, I didn't share that with her. So I kind of gave the information out, to those who I thought could deal with it, needed to know. With some of the cancers, there is some indication that it may run in families. And so I think my children needed to know. And that's why I shared it with them. But I'm pretty open about my disease. I've been very fortunate that, I worked a full-time job and a part-time job. for 4.5 of the 5 years since I got diagnosed. And I just recently cut back to just part-time. I actually have 3 part-time jobs. So, but I keep active. I think I flew 114 or 120 flights last year. So I'm really on the go, so it hasn't slowed me down, but people with the same condition, will tell you that they're bedridden, with pain and fatigue and stuff. So it's individualized, we all respond differently. Like for me, I think the worst for me is always how to deal with uncertainty. Once I had a definitive diagnosis, I was much better about it than I was while they were working me up and trying to determine, what I had. I went through a period of time where they thought, oh, it might be malaria because I had just come back from South America. So they worked me up for malaria, and the first malaria test came back positive. And I thought, I guess I'd rather have malaria than cancer, And then they did another test, a DNA test for malaria, which came back negative. So then they worked me up for, CLL, and it did come back that I had CLL. But once I knew about it, I think I might have mentioned it before you came on the line. I just vowed to myself that I would try to learn what I could about it. There are a lot, once you know a specific disease, there are some disease specific organizations. So, we mentioned the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. They are good for all. But, with my particular condition, I first fell upon the CLL Society. I got involved working with them. They sponsor our local support groups. And I found that to all be valuable. And the more you learn, the better you feel about it. One thing I will tell you is that, as was mentioned, the Google thing is kind of scary. If I look up my condition right now, CLL, and I put down that I have 17p deletion, which I do, it says the average life expectancy is 3.5 years. Well, I learned afterwards that most of the statistics that we look at on diseases are 7 to 10 years old.
Yeah.
It takes that long to be published. And so looking at data from 7 to 10 years ago, before these new drugs that are available today were even on, in clinical trials. So always ask, the more you can narrow down your diagnosis and get information from a specific organization that deals with that particular form of blood cancer, the better off you are.
Another suggestion to make is, once you get that diagnosis, go to, if you have myelodysplastic syndrome, I can't remember what you said you had, but whatever it is, go to a specialist as well. Get a second opinion. You don't have to see them all the time. They could work with your local oncologist, but they become part of your medical team. And it can be really important, even if they say the same thing as your local oncologist.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, in the CLL world, we also promote the utilization of specialists. And there are people that live in certain parts of the country where a specialist is not easily, you'll find a ton of them in New York City, here in Miami or in Florida, we're kind of blessed with 3 or 4 of them. But then you go to places like Wyoming, Montana, and places like that, and they just don't have CLL specialists. But I know people that will travel, for hours to go see a CLL specialist once a year, to kind of set up their care plan and then work with your local team in your community to do routine blood tests, to monitor your care, find out, are you having any side effects from your medication? Are you taking your medication? All of those kinds of things to manage, on a day-to-day basis, but to have that framework established by somebody that really, really understands whatever the final diagnosis is you have.
I just want to ask a last question to all of you, just to come back to Al's issue, which is, how do you tell people what do you say to them if you don't know your diagnosis? What do you say to them? What do you suggest? What words do you use? I mean, what Michelle or Jenny or Richard, how have you dealt with that?
Let me just jump in with that, Rick. I just got through writing an essay on saying goodbye, and in truth, I've been thinking about renaming it to not saying goodbye, but saying hello. And by that I mean that when I was diagnosed, I was new in my position. I had the best job I had had in almost 48 years of professional practice and work. I loved this job. It was great. And I got diagnosed, and about a year into the job, and man, I was angry. I was really pissed. How could anybody do this to me after all of these years of hard work and blah 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 blah. I had to stand up in front of all of the people at the university and to say, I have to leave because I have cancer. And this was a health related university, so they all knew what the hell I was talking about. I didn't, that was for sure. And, of course, there were lots of tears and on everybody's part. And, I walked out and got in the car and drove home, and with lots of tears. And as the time went on, part of the conclusion that I came to was I needed to do a couple of things. One was I needed to talk to my children. And my children are in their 40s. And I needed to say to them, we're a very close family. We talk every day. And they're in different parts of the country. And I needed to tell them what was going on with their father. And obviously, I needed to have that conversation with my spouse, with my wife, who, as it turns out, shares the disease with me because she's my healthcare provider. I guess what I'm trying to say is the sense of honesty about what I was feeling, often in a very confused way, with what they were feeling, often in a similarly confused way. But nonetheless, we worked it out, and we found a way to talk to one another on a regular basis and to be honest with one another about what we were all feeling. Even if that feeling was, how the hell do I know? I don't know. And I have good medical care. I can go to Boston and get some of the best medical care in the country.
But Richard, what do you say to people that you don't know? I understand what you're saying. You've got to be honest. I mean, Michelle, what did you say? What do you tell people who are at sort of arm's length and they're saying, how are you? Do you just say, oh, I'm fine?
Well, Rick, none of us have a mask on tonight. We wouldn't normally. But when you go to the store, do you wear a mask? Do you wear gloves? So it's an easy conversation, in a way, for me to say to a neighbor, I don't go to stores because my immune system is a disaster. And if I got COVID-19, more than likely I would die from it. However,
So I think that.
However, let me just finish. However,
I thought you were done. I'm sorry.
So the issue is You know, what do we say to our friends and our neighbors? I have cancer. I do. I don't go out. My wife drives. We go out for a ride in the car and break all the damn rules just because for the last months I've been stuck at home. Stuck is a positive thing. But, you know, it's the sense of honest communication with people who we know and even people who we don't know. But it's a sense of, you know, it's a sense of who do we love? We love our family. We love our friends. And how do we use that? And you know, in my life, I get lots of emails. My wife gets lots of emails from friends, people that we've known all of our lives, just checking in. How are you doing? How are you managing the COVID-19? How are you managing that along with your cancer? And, you know, we tell them as honest as we can. Good day, bad day. I had a great day today. Yesterday, man, I'll tell you what, I couldn't get out of bed.
Uh,
Anyway, sorry, I
oh,
blowing up.
Yeah, so I think Richard's case is a lot different than maybe Michelle and myself and Jenny, in that most people don't know we have cancer. We don't look like we have cancer. We don't have to stop what we're doing. You know, I take an oral medication. Nobody knows I have cancer. You know, yes, during COVID-19, I'm taking special precautions. But as I said, for 4.5 of the 5 years since I was diagnosed, I went to work every day. I flew, you know,
Well,
top
yeah.
tier with top tier with American Airlines 5 years in a row. You know, held down a full job and a part-time job. So I didn't need to share with everybody that I had, you know, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. With myeloma, where bone marrow transplant is an early treatment. You know, our early treatments are typically, oral medications. If you do have to go for infusion therapy, it's on a defined schedule that you might have to talk to your boss about. Say, hey, look, I'm going to miss, a couple of days of go for my treatment or whatever. So
Sure.
it's a whole different. When you're having bone marrow transplant, you're out of commission for months at a time.
Yes.
You have to stay away from people. So until you have that diagnosis, I don't think if you can perform your normal activities, I don't think you need to share with everybody. Obviously you want to say, hey, I'm checking this out. I still don't know all the details. As soon as I know, I'll share it with the immediate family. But I don't think you need to tell strangers. If it's not affecting your ability to do work, if you still work, I wouldn't tell them at work.
Yeah, I hear you. Yep.
Yeah.
So, with me, I'm not a good person to ask because I didn't tell anyone except I didn't even tell my mother because I didn't want her to worry. Because with CLL, the other thing is, other than Tommy's the first person I met that needed treatment sooner rather than later. But, I didn't need to be treated for 3.5 years, luckily.
Yeah.
And some people, Tom, I think you mentioned they go, 18 years, 20 years, 25 years before they need treating. Others need it more quickly. So I should have told my mom. I do admit that was kind of silly, but I didn't want to stroke her out. It was just like she wouldn't understand, like I didn't understand in the beginning, and I was worried in the beginning. But I did do some pretty knee-jerk reaction things in the beginning, like leave. I was living in Miami with an incredible career, and left immediately because I didn't know enough about CLL. I didn't even know. I'd never heard the words before, like Jack, what you were saying. I was like, what? I don't know what that is. Like, could you spell that? And all I heard was, and it was just, so, I think everyone, it has to be what's right for them. It was very hard because also, as Tommy was saying, but Jack and Richard look pretty good to me. I don't know. They don't look like they're cancer patients either. And I don't know if
Right.
either did when you were in treatment, but that's also thanks to a lot of modern treatments, right? Luckily, they're kinder than they used to be. Although some people still with other types of cancers don't look so. We're a good looking group, right? So
Yeah.
But Michelle, you know what I want to say to you is there's not a damn thing to hide.
Oh,
Hey,
no.
everybody, what
there's
are
what?
we hiding about?
Right.
You are good, legitimate people. You have a medical problem. So why the hell would you hide, except it's in our head? And I'm just telling you that in my perspective, in my view, there's nothing to hide about.
No.
That we are good, solid people who are doing. I mean, look at we're all these people here tonight. We're trying to contribute to something. There's
Can I
nothing to hide.
interject you, Richard, with
Sorry.
you saying that? I told people I got very feared one night and told people I wasn't going to because I heard, oh, don't tell anybody, people won't believe you until you progress and you may outlive a dog's life, all these things. Well, my fiance of 5 years left me because of this. Yeah. And my own siblings, who I have always been extremely close to, and my mom was our rock because my dad passed away very young of cancer. My stepdad passed away young of cancer. So it was always me and my mom and my 2 sisters. However, not either one of them. They came to me to my female exam when I heard about the white blood cells being high or whatever that potentially diagnosed me. But they never call. They never check on me. So there's a patient on Patient Power. Her name's Jennifer Abram. Phenomenal lady, also another younger CLL patient like Michelle and myself. And she did something on there, and I think it was her, another gentleman, I can't remember, but she said people from don't quote me on this, but I think is what she said. People from the forefront go to the back front. People from the back front come to the forefront. And I've remembered that because that is really, truly, not only did I get this diagnosis, just lost my mom, I had to move because I was living with my fiance. He's gone after 5 years. And then now I can't even work because of this coronavirus. But I still remain positive, and people on a need to know basis at this point.
Mhm.
And you just have to tell, I guess I would say the people that are your advocates, your wife, your significant other, people like Tom and I. And Tom and I might misspoke because I don't know if you have a significant other now. I know you said you were a widower at one point.
Yeah, I've remarried, so I'm lucky.
Okay. But it's very challenging I drive all day in my car to do my job. And then I also live at home by myself. So all I have are my thoughts, so it can run rampant.
If you
I
allow
would
it to
say,
run, Jenny, if you allow it to run rampant, it will run rampant. You're
no,
the
you're
one
right.
who's in charge about your thoughts. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to jump in all over you, and please forgive me for doing that, but I feel so strongly about that the people whom I have seen in my lifetime who, talk about their own thoughts, you're in charge. It's not like there's somebody else above you that's in charge of what you think and how you feel. You're in charge.
No, I agree. And that was what I said earlier. I just feel like everything's happened for a reason. And it may have taken me to get this, unfortunately, to get the toxic out of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say that,
Yeah.
they're very good
No,
people. They mean well, but there's only so much people are capable of handling, right? That's kind of how I feel. And I just think that I know when the time comes that I'll need treatment, because I know there's a third of CLL patients that may never need treatment, but I'm only 47 years old. Probably going to guarantee I need it at some point in my life. Hopefully not, but I'm pretty much getting prepared for it at some point. I know I'll have people there for me. I would just be, like Tom said, you don't need to tell your company until the time's needed. Really just do what your gut tells you to do, and surround yourself with good, positive people like this group. I mean, this has helped me tremendously. I don't even know any of you. And I mean, I can't repeat myself enough how much Michelle, and she doesn't even know it. She probably thinks I'm a stalker or something.
I'm gonna have to pay you on the side, Jenny, for that promotion. Too bad
Yeah,
Andrew
I know.
isn't on the call.
Right. No,
Brian's
but I
talking.
have, it's just such a relief to hear what she's went through. I've watched all her blogs. She gives me a tremendous amount of hope. She's very spot on, and clearly, and she's a patient, and her markers aren't even as good as mine are. But to be so positive and vibrant and still living and, enjoying every moment. I'm sure she has her moments, as we all do, but sometimes it's mind over matter too, a little bit, I don't know.
So guys, I just want to say this has been a really terrific group, and the last hour and a half that you're all fantastic and inspirational. We've lost a couple of you along the way to bedtime stories, and I don't know what else. But this is why we have these groups. This is exactly why we have these groups. And we have difference of opinions, and that is the best, because there is no one answer to all these problems. And everybody does their things a little bit differently. And if you can come in here, you hear somebody say one thing, somebody say another thing, it just makes you think and look at things different ways. But the bottom line is we're all here to support each other. Amen. And Al, I'm so grateful that you were courageous enough to join the group, because it's very hard early on, and it takes a lot of gumption to step over that line and figure out that the people don't bite, that they're really all here to support you and help you. And I hope you'll come back next month. And of course, you and I will talk between now and then. And, I'll help you however I can and show you ways that you can start looking in the right places for your information. And I just thank everybody, Jenny, for coming in. And Jenny, I hope you'll be back. And I love my moderators. We're so lucky here. And, we'll have other people. I just want to say hello to my friend Bobby there in her lovely red shirt. Hello, Bobby. And we welcome caregivers here. You can come in separately as well. You could have your own video icon here.
Hang on.
That's right.
We love caregivers.
Yeah, my husband was a little shy about speaking, but he brought in something that actually Rick is going to laugh about, but the rest of you kind of don't know this. Well, actually Kenny's gone as his chat, but one of my things is Wonder Woman, and this arrived today. He had this done for me because that's kind of my thing. And
I love it. I have a Wonder Woman badge. That's great.
All right.
All right.
Everyone, so
Rick, you never told me this. That's what we were going to do here. What's fun?
told you that you had Wonder Woman as a partner, as a
Yeah.
moderator partner?
With my wife.
Part of the deal is we have to get a picture and then we'll put it on the blog.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Michelle, you better hide it.
We'll get more attendees.
That's right.
That's great, marvelous. Right on.
The pillow stuffed in it, so it'll stand up.
Okay.
Having you all here with us. Thank you so much. And Tom,
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, everybody. June the 10th.
Right.
June the 10th is the next one. And make sure, Jenny, make sure you're signed up on our, so that you get the reminder. Just go to ancan.org or send Michelle your email or she'll send it to me and we'll get you signed up and we'll see you all next month, and stay safe, everybody. Just be careful as they ease these restrictions, okay?
Thank you so
Amen.
much.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.